Hi, I'm Shira Carpel.
And I'm Shayna Gaunt, and we're board-certified behavior analysts. At How to ABA, we provide practical resources, community, and support to ABA professionals. In each episode of our podcast, we will be having real conversations with real people, sharing real stories about ABA.
We'll share relevant strategies and actionable tips that will make us all better ABA practitioners. It's the ABA content you need that you're not going to learn in a textbook.
Welcome, everyone. Today, we have a parent, Vidya Banerjee, who is going to share with us her story of being a mother to a now teenager with autism. You know, we talk about the journey of a professional and how we grow and we develop, but it's also interesting to hear from a parent's perspective what that journey is like from their side. Vidya actually went back to school to be able to train as a therapist, to be able to work with her son. And I know she'll have a lot of really useful information to share with the professional community from her perspective. So welcome, Vidya.
Thank you, Sheena. Thank you, Shayna, for having me here today.
Thanks for being here. We're really looking forward to hearing about your story. Can you start by telling us really about yourself, your son, how you kind of fell into, discovering that he had autism and what that was like?
Sure. So I'm a mom of two boys. One of my boys is in university, and my second son, my younger son, who is a teenager now, is a child on the autism spectrum. So Arian has nonverbal autism, and he also has a rare seizure disorder, which is called Landau-Kleffner syndrome. So Arian uses AAC to communicate, and he has dual diagnosis. So my journey in the field of autism or in the world of autism started when Arian was around 18 months of age. Because as a baby, Arian was a very quiet baby. He, in the beginning, hit all his milestones, and we never had any cause to worry. But it was around 18 months of age that we started noticing some classic signs of autism, like he did not have eye contact. He never looked at us when we called his name. He toe walked, which he does till today. He rarely played with toys. He never interacted with us or anyone else. He loved to be alone. But me and my husband at that time, we were not aware of what autism was. So I think we kind of missed on those signs. And we just thought that there was a slow development for Arian. My mother-in-law, she's a special needs teacher in the US. And it is my mother-in-law who got it to her attention that Arian might have autism. So I think that was the first time both of us, me and my husband, heard about autism. And it was.
And he was 18 months at this point?
He was 18 months at this time.
Wow.
And we had gone to the US to visit my in-laws. And that's when my mother-in-law mentioned about autism, the possibility that Arian might have autism. When we went for our monthly visits to the pediatrician, he never mentioned anything to us. He never said that he was concerned about Arian's development. And because we were so ignorant, we had no idea ourselves, we never got it to his attention as well. So we came back to Canada. We scheduled an appointment with his pediatrician. And that was the first time when we mentioned to him that we are thinking that Arian might have autism. So he right away made an appointment for us with the early interventionist. And in a couple of months, we were right in the room with the early interventionist, myself, my husband, and Arian. So at this time, Arian was around 2 years of age. So they just asked to sit in the room and just observe. And they were trying to interact with Arian. And they asked him to do some basic things like rolling a ball, stacking blocks, simple imitation. But I think by that time, Arian had lost most of his skills. And there was so much skill regression that he was unable to do anything which they asked him to do. So we came out of the room after the evaluation. And by law, they could not tell us that something was wrong. So they asked us that we had to wait for a formal diagnosis. And as you all know, in Canada, to wait for a formal diagnosis, the list is around an year. The wait list is for an year. So we came home. At that time, we kind of expected that Arian was going to get this diagnosis at some point of time. But we just could not sit doing nothing in the meanwhile till we waited for a formal diagnosis. Because in Canada, to get the formal diagnosis, there is a wait list. And then to get on the government-funded ABA therapy, there's another wait list. So we had a lot of hurdles to cross through. In the meanwhile, as I said, my husband, we were so ignorant about autism. Me as a mom, I always thought that maybe there was a mistake. Maybe Aryan was just slow in development and things will get better. So I was just trying to pacify myself. And, I was on Google all the time, trying to get whatever information I could to read about autism, to read about the classic signs which Aryan was exhibiting.
As a parent, you must have been super frustrated that you weren't getting any answers.
Oh, yes. So we were very, very frustrated because my mother-in-law was in the States and we were here in Canada, and we absolutely had no idea how to connect with him. How do we, even reach him? Like, it was very, very difficult. I think that was the most difficult phase in this whole journey, I must say. If I look back today and how far we have come, but I think it's in the beginning when we started this journey, that was the most, I think, hard time for all of us.
Just like wanting to help and not knowing what to do, right?
Exactly. That's correct.
And I find that, there are some parents who a diagnosis is a relief because it gives them some sort of answers and direction. And there are some parents who kind of avoid getting a diagnosis, like they don't want to know, or they don't want to be told that it's, officially autism. Where were you in that? Like, were you looking to be confirmed that it was autism? How did you take that diagnosis? Did it give you that comfort and direction?
Yes, I think in the beginning, I was, of course, like other parents, I was kind of in denial, thinking that, there could have been a mistake. But as the time went by, between the time of 2 to 3 years of age, and when we noticed that there was a lot of skill regression and we started noticing all these classic signs, and as I started getting educated more about autism, I think it was a big relief, I must say, when Aryan finally did get the formal diagnosis at 3 years of age.
Wow. So if you could say something to, a parent who now has a 2-year-old who is waiting for a diagnosis, who doesn't know what to do, maybe doesn't have funding yet, what is the advice that you could give them, having been there and kind of having now the hindsight? Is there something that you could tell that parent?
What I would like to tell that parent is 2 things. One, if you notice anything is out of the ordinary, if you see that the child is regressing, if you see any kind of lack in the skill development, then please bring it to the attention of your pediatrician or the doctor. So that way they can recommend you to the right supports. So you can put that process in place. So that is one thing which we missed out on. So that is my number 1 advice. The number 2 advice is, I know it is very hard, very overwhelming to accept that your child has got a lifelong diagnosis, because it not only affects the child, but it affects your whole family. But the sooner you accept the diagnosis, the sooner you can start putting right supports in place and start helping your child. So that is my biggest advice to the parents, because I have been there once upon a time in their shoes.
Wow. You mentioned that you turned to good old Dr. Google for some advice. What did you find, or what did you find? Did you do ABA before the funding kicked in, or did you try anything at home? What types of things?
Sure. So, of course, I saw lots of approaches for helping your child with autism. And then at that time, the first thing we learned about is ABA therapy. I think we learned it through some of our friends, that ABA therapy was the most promising for kids with autism. So that's how we started our own ABA therapy at home. So we went to this private clinic and we started ABA with, I think, 1 to 2 hours a week, because physically it was not possible for Aryan to do 40 hours of therapy, even though that is what was recommended. And financially, it was not possible for us to do that. So we said, at least let us start with an hour, and then we can start slowly adding in as Aryan is able to tolerate it. So that's how we started in the world of ABA. And I think Aryan benefited tremendously from it. And it has contributed a lot to his success today.
Now, you've been working with ABA professionals for a while now. You mentioned that Aryan is now a teenager. Is there any advice along the way that you would give to ABA service providers?
Sure. So there is a few things I would like to tell the ABA service providers is, first of all, to the therapist who is working with your child, because we had a couple of therapists who were coming to our home. We were doing the in-home therapy. instead of sending Arian to the clinic. So we had these two therapists. I think they used to alternate and come to our home. I think it was 3 to 5 days a week. I don't exactly remember the details, but the first advice I would like to give those therapists is build a connection with our child, even before working with him, start to build that trust with the child. So they will love being with them. They will love to work with them, play with them, and the child will do something if they like the people or they like that person who is with them. So I think that's my first advice. Second advice is involve us as parents to be a part of that therapy, because the therapist only comes to your house, say an hour a week, or an hour a day, or maybe 2 hours a day, depending on each family's unique situation. So the most important thing is show the parents why you're teaching these skills, how we have to teach these skills to your child, because we are the ones, the parents, who spend the maximum time with our kids. So that way we can have the carryover at home. We can include those techniques in daily living, in the social skills, everywhere. So that way the child can acquire those goals, learn those skills, and also there is a skill generalization, which is so important for our kids. So that way they only don't do it with that therapist for an hour, but they will slowly start getting those skills in all the environments with all the people. So it's a long process. It just doesn't happen overnight. But at least as parents, I think that is very important, that the parent involvement is the key. And the parents who are involved, that's the child, or those are the kids who will make the maximum progress. I strongly believe in that. And it's my own son. Like today, I can really vouch for it, because that's how he has come a long, long way.
Yeah, that's so true. It's such great advice. I mean, on our end, to be able to make those relationships and pair. And then for parents to hear that, I mean, at least from our experience, that the more we can involve the parents, the more the parents want to learn, the farther their child will go for the most part. And I think that you were one of the eager parents who kind of went above and beyond. Tell us about how you got further training, how you educated yourself. I'm sure this world was new to you. I don't think this was your previous career as an ABA professional.
No.
What was that transition like?
Sure. So as I was mentioning, when we were waiting for Arian's formal diagnosis, there was an EA who used to come to my home once a month to engage with Arian. And, it was really heartbreaking, because we used to see her trying her best to engage with Arian, but it was really getting harder. So one day, out of curiosity, I asked her, I really want to help my son, but I don't know what to do. Is there any advice you can give me? So she said, if you really want my advice, go back to school. I think that was the best advice I got from someone. So I took up that offer. I went back to school. I did my autism graduation certificate. It did take me 3 years, because I had a family, I had a job, I had other son. So it did take a lot out of me. But I did take that advice. And I think the best decision in my life, because I never looked back after that. I became my son's therapist. I was able to learn the different techniques, the different therapies, whether it was speech therapy, occupational therapy, ABA therapy, in the school, what they were working with Arian. So I was able to sit and learn through those therapies and then implement that with Arian. So I think that is how my journey started. And I think I never looked back. I always want to learn. Every day I keep looking on social media, on Google. Maybe I read books. I listen to a lot of podcasts, read a lot of blogs, just to see if there's something new I can find which will benefit Arian. So I'm always on the lookout for that information. And that is my biggest advice to parents, that don't stop, just keep on looking, because you are your child's best advocate. And the more informed you are in a better position to help your son.
And Vidya, you have a blog now as well as a podcast. Do you want to tell us about that?
Sure. So I started a blog in December of 2019, because I knew how overwhelming and isolating it was when we started our journey in the field of autism. Like, I went to Google, I didn't have any blog, or I didn't have anyone I could speak to gain from that experience. So I thought, why not? I have learned so much over the years. If there's any way I can help other parents on this journey. So I started a blog. It is called Autism Family Story. So I share a lot of information over there about our journey throughout the years. I also cover a lot of other topics. I have a lot of information there about this pandemic and the virtual learning, because even Arian is currently doing virtual learning. So I will share a lot of information there. And I was thinking about starting a podcast from a long time, but just didn't know how to do it. And then I said, you know what, I'm going to take a jump in it. And I started Autism Family Story podcast just this week. And I'm trying my best to help other parents in whatever way I can so they can help their children in turn.
Wow, that's amazing. We'll link that in the show notes if anyone wants to check out your blog, please do. And
Thank you.
You mentioned that your son uses AAC to communicate. I imagine that was a bit of a learning curve for you. Also, just like a tough pill to swallow potentially. Like, how did you take that on? How did you embrace it? What kind of support did you get with the AAC?
Sure. So early on, Arian, in the beginning, he babbled a bit and then he lost all his speech. That was the first time when he got diagnosed with autism. And then after a few months, we started Arian saying single words. So that was like a miracle for us. So I remember I used to have a running list of words on my fridge. Every day I could hear a new word and I would run and write it down on the fridge on my notepad. And then one day, all of a sudden, Arian went silent again. So there was this speech therapist who used to come to our house and he said, a child losing speech a second time, this is not good. This is something you need to check with a neurologist. So just to be sure that everything is okay. So again, we went back to the pediatrician. We made an appointment and we got a referral to the neurologist. And then my son got diagnosed with Landau-Kleffner syndrome. That is that epilepsy, kind of epilepsy. It's 1 in 200,000 kids who have that syndrome. So Arian never spoke after that because I think it's that seizures which took away his voice. So early on, we knew that, there is a possibility that Arian might never have verbal speech. So we had to introduce some kind of a communication. So like everybody else, we introduced the PECS, Picture Exchange Communication System. I'm sure a lot of parents might be already familiar with that, or maybe some parents don't know about it. So they should look into that because it is very, very important that we set up some kind of a communication system for your child early on. So that's very important. In the year 2012 was the time we got introduced to the world of AAC, and they recommended Proloco to Go. I'm sure you must have heard about Proloco to Go. So that is how we started our journey in the AAC. And
sorry, just going to cut you off. So for anybody who doesn't know AAC, we're talking about augmentative communication. So it's, an iPad, it could be communicating via a tablet or an app on a tablet. It could, be the olden days, and it's this big clunky device that you had, and it was called a Dynavox or a Springboard or something like that. So AAC, we're just referring to some type of augmentative communication system.
That's correct. So it was really a big learning curve for us because, as they say, you have to keep modeling, model. So it was really hard to do that modeling consistently. Eventually, Arian did learn the Proloco to Go. He had it longest for 8 years. But what we noticed is motivation was the big problem with Arian, and I'm sure a lot of parents can relate to it. If he wanted something, he will go to his system, he will go to the Proloco to Go, he will find it, he will request it, and that's it. But what we struggled with was initiation on Arian's part. So that is something we struggle with. And I think it's even today. Today, he doesn't communicate with Proloco to Go, but we just got Touch Chat. I don't know if you have heard about Touch Chat. So This is the one he got last August. So he's getting better at it. But it's a lot of work which a parent has to do because you have to keep on modeling for the child to see that you are using their system, their voice to communicate with them. So I'm still learning. I'm not an expert by any means, but I'm trying to learn. I'm trying to get familiar with the system. So if there is any changes which have to be made, if there's anything which has to be done, I'm the one who is going to be responsible because you will have therapists, you will have professionals who will come and go, but it's you as a parent who will always be constant. So the more you get familiar with their device, you are in a better position to help them.
That and not to mention that, parents are amazing when they're following through, they're amazing. But if you're not familiar as a parent, if you're not familiar with the augmentative communication device, or no professional has showed you how to use it and said, oh, hey, we're just using it in session, don't worry about it. You're essentially, when you're giving him what he wants without him having to request it, you would be sabotaging any type of learning that was happening in a therapy session. So as a parent who's following through on promoting communication, however that may look, then you're consistent with what he's being taught in all areas of his life. Not just, when I'm in a therapy session or with the speech pathologist, I have to do it this way. But any other time, all I need to do is, cry and my mom will give me what I want, or I just have to pull her hand or tap on the door and I get what I want. And that's definitely where parent follow through has the most impact, is saying, no, like we're teaching you how to communicate, period.
That's correct. That's very correct. I think consistency is very important with our kids, whether it's in therapy, whether it is in communication, because the more you can keep things consistent, whether it's in the school, in the therapy center, in your home, that's the way you will see maximum gains for your child.
Yeah, it's so true. Part of what I enjoyed when I was doing home-based therapy was getting to get the parents involved and getting to see that follow through. And, if we were in someone's home, then we could do all the stuff that was relevant to their real lives, as opposed to being in a, an isolated center or clinic or something like that. And I remember one of the first kids I worked with, it must've been around 2011, 2012, when AAC was still relatively new. And the kid I saw had Proloco on a little iPod, and I was like blown away. And it's really fantastic to see how far we've come on that side of things, which is really amazing. And you mentioned having, there was a team, there's speech pathologists, there's doctors, there's neurologists, there's teachers, there's all those people who contribute to the growth and development of your child, any child. How do you as a mom kind of tie it all together? How do you make sure that everyone's on the same page, getting the team to work together, getting the messages across to all those people? How does that work?
So I was very particular about this in a few ways. So in the school, I was always, I don't know if I should say that, but I was that parent, because I always asked for a lot of feedback from the teachers. His teachers were very good. He was in a community classroom. And I understand lots of kids, along with my son, had lots of needs in the classroom. So what I did is I asked a teacher to set up a meeting every 3 months. So just to make sure that we were all on the same page. So what are the things he's working on at school? What were the challenges? What are the things I could help at home, which will help him in school? So those were all the questions I used to ask. Because Aryan was nonverbal, so he could never say anything to us. And I'm sure a lot of other parents struggle with the same thing. So the teachers, I know, they really want to help, but it's the lack of time. They have lots of other kids. They have lots on their hand. So they only used to say Aryan had a good day. But Aryan had a good day. It didn't mean anything to me. I really wanted to know, what does that mean? What did he work on? What are the things he struggled with? So I think we set up this kind of a system with the teachers. I think it helped both of us. So that way it helped us to be on the same page. And I think we worked as a team together. So that way we were both able to help Aryan to be successful. So, and then in terms of speech therapy, occupational therapy, because he did get some from the government, but most of the things we did privately. So I always tried to sit in the sessions and try to see how they work with Aryan, what kind of skills they are working on. And then if I had any questions, I always used to ask them, I want to work on this skill. Is there anything I could do differently? Or this is what we are struggling with. What is your recommendations for that? So I think that way I tried to be on the same page with the doctor or the therapist, the teacher. So that way, I think we were all on the same page. I think that helped Aryan a lot as well.
Yeah, I love that example of, he or she had a good day, because so many times from our side, we don't always understand what a parent wants to hear. So we resort to like, yeah, they were great. We had a great session. And I think understanding that parents really want to know what that means. Like, does that mean that he ate all his lunch? Does that mean that, he mastered a couple programs? And I think we talk so much about behavior specific, observable and measurable. So let's include that in our communication with parents so that they can see what those observable and measurable gains have been on a daily basis, because they need that feedback also. And it sounds like from a parent's perspective, the main message is don't wait. Like, you need to advocate, you need to ask questions, you need to intervene, you need to speak up, because you are your child is the most important person in the world to you. And as important as they are to other professionals, it's the parent who's going to, be able to advocate the most for your child. So don't stop.
That's correct. Very, very important. You have to continuously advocate. The needs will change as the children grow up, but you're advocating, you should never stop. That's something you have to, I think, do all your life. I think that is one of the worries for all of us. I'm sure to all the parents who are listening, it's always a worry, what's going to happen to our kids when we are not going to be here anymore. So it's kind of advocating for them to get them the right services, to help them to become independent in whatever capacity they can be. Every child is different. As they say, if you have met an individual with autism, you have met an individual with autism. So every child has their strengths and differences. So whatever best your child can be, so you have to keep advocating for that. That's the biggest takeaway.
Wow. Well, he's very lucky to have such a strong mom who's willing
Thank you so much.
And who's willing to be as dedicated as you are. And I'm sure you've seen, the fruits of all your efforts in how well he's able to be doing. And I'm so thankful that you shared your blog with us and your podcast, and we'll share that to our community. And we appreciate you being here and sharing your story. I'm sure it will help a lot of professionals be able to see from your perspective and just understand where parents are coming from and be able to relate to them more. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Sheena and Shayna, for having me today. I really appreciate for giving me an opportunity to come to your podcast and speak to lots of other parents. I hope people listening today, they can take away something from this interview and try to help their own child. That is my goal. That is the goal behind whether it's my social media, whether it is my blog, now a podcast, so just trying to reach and help these parents, and they can contact me. They can get in touch with me anytime if they want to speak to me. I'm very open to that. I'm very open to speaking to other parents. So thank you so much for having me today. I really appreciate your time today.
And that's amazing. And thanks for being such a great advocate for not only your son, but for other parents as well. Thanks for joining today's conversation. Wherever you get your podcast, please go and subscribe, rate and review so others can find out about us too.
For more from How to ABA, including free resources and ABA materials, visit our blog at howtoaba.com. And make sure that you're following us on social media for more practical tips and updates.